guide you towards the yes button on the screen so that you can show that you are here by selecting the yes. And if you're struggling to find the yes, just be patient. It'll be there any 3, 2, 1.
How do we first say?
Is there anybody present whose jurisdiction is not showing up?
I just closed it. We got enough. 17 yeses.
Thank you.
And now I'd ask that you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance by standing, and I'll ask Councilman Tisdale to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me as we honor our nation's flag. Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Janice, do we have any requests to speak other than the one you gave me?
No, sir.
Arnold, are you hiding? There you are. We're going to start just adding you to our agenda. I've suggested we put you down at the bottom.
That would be too much work. Don't do that.
How are you?
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. Just wanted to bring up a couple of reminders of what's going on right now. So we are doing our Connect SoCal workshops. We're taking input from everybody on if you want something in the long-range regional transportation plan and sustainable community strategies, this is the time to tell staff, this is what I want to see in the plan. So we're doing workshops in this nearby area, June 5th, 9 a.m. at the historic Santa Fe Depot in San Bernardino, next Tuesday, June 11th at the Skag Riverside office right across the street, and then June 11th at 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Corona Public Library. So come out and join us for that if you can. And then free for all elected officials is our demographic summit, Make It Count, the impact of the Census 2020 and Connect SoCal on our future. That's Tuesday, also June 11th, all day 8:30 to 3:30 at the USC School of Public Policy. And you can do that by Metrolink and by rail. You don't have to drive. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Arnold. Next item is minutes. Item number 4, minutes from May 6th. And unless there are any requests to pull any of those items or pull that item for comments, rather, I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes as is. You want me to end the vote, Janice?
Actually, Mr. Chair, the agenda that I am seeing in the system is not the agenda that we have presented in front of you.
Oh.
We're going to check with IT. Okay.
Well, in any case, the minutes are approved on a 16-0 vote. And I'm sure that that's what everybody intended, to vote on the May 6th minutes. Is there anyone here that would like to change their vote on the minutes? And everyone knows we were voting on May 6th minutes. Okay, we're good. And while they're working on those technical issues, the next item is consent calendar, and it's 5A through 5L. I. I've got L.
L?
Are there any requests to pull any of those items for comments or suggestions? Is everyone comfortable that they're looking at the correct agenda? If so,
The PowerPoint is displayed on the screens. Everybody should be able to also see that.
okay. Please register your vote on the consent calendar. That one's wrong, but you got to vote. Yeah. So are they still working on getting the correct agenda up there?
I'll check with Patrick or Paul when he comes back. I don't know if they need to do a restart of the system because it shows at the top of my screen here that they've opened the agenda for May 6th, not today.
Dang. Well, from where I'm sitting, it looks like the consent calendar was approved 17-1, but it does show that there's only 9 items, which is not correct, obviously.
Correct. So what I will do is take the votes that were being recognized here today. When I prepare the minutes, it will have the accurate items.
Okay. Who was the one abstention?
District 5.
Okay. So
You can't see the agenda, sir?
You don't have
Or
that?
the PowerPoint?
do you have a hard copy? Oh.
I don't have a copy right now.
The PowerPoint looks correct.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anybody want to change their vote? Okay. All right. So we have 18 yes,
Thank you, sir.
0 no's, 0 abstentions. That moves us down to reports and discussions. The first item on that is 6A, report from League of California Cities. Aaron Sassy.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here today. Erin Sassy with the League of California Cities. Last week was the deadline for bills to be heard in their House of Origin, so we had some good and bad things happen, mostly bad, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of the items for you. One thing before I go into the legislative item, I know in the past I've brought up that CalPERS had an agenda item at their June meeting to make the Fuller case a precedential decision, which basically would have been making it very difficult for all of you to contract for employees. That agenda item has been pulled. We don't think it's coming back at this point, so that is very good news. So we can all breathe a little easier on that. So thank you for all of those of you that helped with that. The governor's budget still has the trailer bill that ties housing production to transportation. There is no appetite for this in the legislature, so we do believe it's going to be removed. I think they're looking at alternatives. They want to still have some sort of accountability for cities not reaching their housing production goals, but I don't think it will end up being transportation. I just don't know what it will be at this point. One good item which happened is that SB 50 was killed. Unfortunately, there's an assembly bill that has a lot of similar components that did make it out of the assembly. It's AB 1279 by Bloom. I think that there's going to be a little bit of a political battle with this because it took a lot of effort to kill SB 50, and now that this one's very similar, not really sure what's going to happen, but you should all be watching that one. The one difference is that it would likely apply to all cities. There's not a lot of defined definitions in the bill, but the way we're looking at it is that every city would likely qualify for that. So please pay attention. It's AB 1279 by Bloom. It has to do with high resource areas, and that did make it into the Senate. Another bill is SB 330. This is the Housing Crisis Act of 2019. It also made it out of the Senate and is now in the Assembly. So this puts a moratorium on all of you for 5 years from imposing parking requirements. It freezes fees and charges. Pretty bad for all of you, so you probably want to get some letters in on that. Another bill that I've brought up in the past is AB 849 by Bonta. This has to do with your redistricting process. It also made it out of the Assembly and is now in the Senate. Basically, this has been amended, but it would still require 4 different public hearings, one to be held on either a weekend or after 6 p.m., regardless of your population size, and it requires you to do live translation services for all applicable languages when you're doing your redistricting process. So it's going to be very difficult for all of you. You should be getting your letters in on that. Another bill that I know a lot of you have been sending in letters recently is AB 516 by Chu. This one made it out of the Assembly and is also in the Senate. This basically eliminates your ability to enforce your vehicle violations. So this one, we really need phone calls made to all of our senators, so Senator Roth, Senator Stone, Senator Morell. It's likely going to be heard next week, so tight timeline for you to get letters in, but you need to at least get some calls in to the senators. So we really need to work on that one. One other positive item is AB 1356. This is the Ting bill that had to do with cannabis. It is now dead for the year. I think it will likely come back in the future, but thank you to all of you that did letters, phone calls. It did not make it out of the Assembly, so definitely good news. Probably the only piece of good news I have left, so sorry about that. AB 392, Weber, is the deadly force bill. It also made it out and is now in the Senate. I know we've been working with the police chiefs on this. Really bad bill. If you haven't sent in a letter, if you haven't made phone calls, please do so. I mean, this is a really difficult bill to battle, but it really is going to tie the hands of our law enforcement community. So get your letters in. SB 5, one other positive. SB 5, which is the Senate bill that would bring back a form of redevelopment, did also make it out. It sounds like that is going to be the vehicle this year. AB 11 didn't proceed. So SB 5 is the redevelopment bill. So if you haven't supported that, we'd like to encourage you to do so. One other bill, it's AB 1112. It did make it out of the Assembly and is in the Senate. This would eliminate your ability to regulate the motorized scooters. So you might want to look at that if you are considering having scooters within your city, or even if you're not, because it would kind of take away your local control for that. So please get your letters in. There's going to be a lot of action in the next couple of weeks before they go on recess. But thank you for everything you've already been doing at this point, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions for Aaron? Seems like there's been a real assault on local control.
Yes.
City of Hemet.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment to make. I'm right in front of you.
I'm sorry. I'm like, who's talking?
I just want to thank you for that comprehensive report.
Thank you.
That it was really, really helpful to have them all in front of us like that. So thank you very much for that. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. There's a lot more bills on there that I did not address, so.
I realize that. And thank you for that, too.
I don't want to keep you here all day.
All right. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Okay, we've come to a branch in the agenda. They're telling me that the only way to get the correct agenda on your screen is to reboot and then re-sign every seat back into the system. That's going to be a while. The other option would be on the PowerPoint. Is that correct, Janice? We are displaying the correct agenda, as well as, is there anyone that doesn't have a hard copy or a digital copy in front of them that they can use? Because I'd rather not shut down the whole system to go through that again. And I can do voice votes if that's what you need.
Well, everybody that's here is registered. We can still do electronic votes. Just know that it's not matched with the item. I'm not sure how you're seeing it on your screen, but my screen, this is last month's agenda.
Yeah. That's what they're saying, other than the PowerPoint. So if you select the camera button, you will see the PowerPoint. If you select the gavel, you'll see the agenda that's on the screen, but it's last month's agenda. Is everybody clear on that?
So we can keep it on the PowerPoint the entire time.
Okay, because the other one's worthless anyway, so.
Yes, sir.
All right, great. The next item then is item 6B, TUMP program updates.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Daniel Ramirez Cornejo, Program Manager in the Transportation and Planning Department at WRCOG, and today I'll be providing an update on a few TUMP program activities. By way of background, the TUMP is a regional mitigation fee assessed on new development for transportation improvements in the WRCOG subregion. So I'll begin with a recap of TUMP collections through March 2019. Approximately $45 million in TUMP has been collected, with 3 months left of collection reporting in the fiscal year. Staff is anticipating that that revenues for fiscal year 18-19 will exceed the $53 million collected in fiscal year 17-18. Single-family residential collections continue to be the largest contributor of the TUMP revenues at about 51%. This is followed by the industrial land use, which is 21% of the total collected through March, or approximately $10 million. We would like to note that multifamily TUMP collections have more than doubled that of fiscal year 17-18. In the past couple of months, we've had major multifamily development projects pay TUMP in the city of Riverside and the city of Menifee. Here we have TUMP revenue broken down by zone. The northwest, southwest, and central zones are the major contributors to the TUMP collections at about 90% of the total. However, we have seen increases in TUMP collections for both the Jemez San Jacinto and Pass zones. The Pass zone revenue has already exceeded that of fiscal year 17-18, which is about $2 million. I'll now move on to the TUMP calculation and collection policy that was approved, the policy revision that was approved by the Executive Committee in October of 2018. The revision allowed member agencies the option to delegate the fee collection responsibility to WRCOG. Member agencies that wished to delegate the fee collection responsibility to WRCOG must approve a TUMP ordinance amendment. 16 of the 20 TUMP participating agencies have notified WRCOG of their intention to delegate the responsibility to WRCOG, and they are in the process of approving the TUMP ordinance amendment. These 16 member agencies that have indicated the change in the process represent approximately 80% of all the TUMP collections. The cities of Beaumont, Lake Elsinore, Paris, and the County of Riverside have notified WRCOG that they will maintain the previous process and will continue remitting TUMP to WRCOG on a monthly basis. And annually, WRCOG will follow up with each agency to confirm that status that of who is responsible for collecting and calculating the TUMP. Since TUMP collections began by WRCOG in March, WRCOG has collected more than $4 million in TUMP. The way the process has been working is that member agency staff submit calculation requests to WRCOG for staff to review. WRCOG make the fee calculations and submit the TUMP obligation for specific projects to both the developer and the member agency. In general, this turnaround time has been within the hour of receiving the request from member agency staff. And on a monthly basis, staff is distributing reports to each of those agencies with the TUMP calculations and the collections made for the month. We would note that most of the TUMP collections that WRCOG has made to date have been made electronically. And with that, we are working with Viewpoint Government Solutions to develop an online fee portal for member agencies to submit the calculation requests and for developers to make their TUMP payments. We would expect that the project will be completed by August, and as major milestones are completed, we'll be bringing back updates to the committee structure for review. The last two items on, as part of the staff report are TUMP reimbursement agreements. The first reimbursement agreement is with the City of Eastvale for the Limonite Avenue extension, which will include a bridge over the Cucamonga Creek. The reimbursement agreement is in the amount of $1.5 million and is for the planning and engineering phases of the project. The second reimbursement agreement is with the City of Menifee, and it is for the Scott Road widening project. The reimbursement agreement is in the amount of $2.3 million, and it is for the planning and engineering phases of the work. The Scott Road widening will ultimately tie into the Scott Road interchange, which is currently under construction. With that, Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions regarding the TUMP program updates? City of Menifee.
Daniel,
Yes.
are developers able to contact WRCOG and get fee calculations, or are they strictly to go through the cities?
For fee estimates, they can contact WRCOG. We did last fall develop a fee estimator tool that can be accessed through our website, and we've been directing most of the developers to that tool.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. The requested action for this item is to authorize the executive director to execute a TUMP reimbursement agreement with the City of Eastvale, planning and engineering phases of Limonite. Authorize the executive director to execute a TUMP reimbursement agreement with the City of Menifee for planning and engineering, Scott Road, an amount not to exceed $2.3 million. Are there any other questions? Can I get a motion? Can you open?
Motion to approve.
Just push the button and vote. All right, that motion is approved with 16 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 2 abstentions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is 6C, TUMP fee calculation handbook updates. Christopher Gray.
Good morning, members of the committee. Christopher Gray, Director of Transportation Planning for WRCOG, and I'm here to talk to you on another TUMP item. This one is even more exciting than the last one. So we're here to tell you about a minor adjustment we're making in the calculation process for industrial uses. When we go back to the dawn of time, back when TUMP was calculated on granite tablets, originally TUMP had a single industrial category. So any kind of industrial, whether it's a warehouse, a factory, anything like that, was a single fee, single category. In the mid-2000s, it was brought to our attention that there's a new type of warehouse, which was called a high cube. And what's unique about a high cube is it has very low, relatively low levels of employment. These are those warehouses that have big giant doors, and it's basically for loading and unloading of trucks. So we said, hey, this is something that needs to be studied further. We looked at available data, conducted a study, and we said, you know, this use needs its own fee calculation. Well, fast forward to today, we're now seeing yet another type of use, which are really these fulfillment and distribution centers. This is associated with e-commerce, and these are related to facilities that take packages, separate them out, and these packages then get delivered to you. So we were asked to look into whether we needed a separate fee calculation for this use as well. And what I wanted to show you is it's pretty obvious to figure out what these types of uses are. So if you look at this aerial photo, you'll see that this is an industrial building that is about 10 years old. There's very limited parking at the top and the bottom. There's actually quite a bit of truck storage and loading areas. When we go to other facilities, the passenger car and the employee parking has increased significantly. So these facilities have a lot more employees working at them than the high cube warehouses we had studied previously. So we had also gotten a request from Riverside County District 1 to specifically look at the impacts of industrial land uses, and we had a number of other stakeholders that asked us to look at are we addressing industrial uses in an equitable fashion. We really gave ourselves 2 questions to answer. One, do these fulfillment and distribution centers generate more traffic than a typical high cube warehouse? And secondly, is it enough of a difference, or is there a reason for us to give them their own fee calculation category? So we went out, and being good traffic folks, we collected a bunch of data. We went to some existing studies and found out we didn't have a lot of really great data that was local, so we went out and did traffic counts at 16 facilities. And we picked those facilities by talking to staff at the City of Eastvale, Yupra Valley, Moreno Valley, Paris, and Riverside to help us identify and facilitate those counts. We collected 72-hour counts at these 16 sites, and we made sure to follow all the protocols for data collection. What we found, surprising to us, is that these facilities don't actually generate more truck trips than typical use, but they do generate a lot more activity, and that activity occurs in terms of passenger cars. What has happened, and no one ever projected this, is one, they have a lot of employees working at these facilities, and two, they're asking their employees to both work there and make deliveries. So in fact, it used to be that packages were delivered by trucks. Now packages are being delivered by passenger vehicles. In fact, there's a mom in my neighborhood who drives around a minivan and has her daughter deliver Amazon packages for us. So what we're finding is, yes, these facilities do generate a lot more vehicular traffic, primarily automobiles, than typical warehouses. So to answer our question, yes, they do generate more traffic. It justifies a change in how the calculation is done. But there isn't enough separation to require that there's a new category. Part of the challenge, too, is, our jurisdictions have told us a number of times, they don't actually know what kind of warehouse is being built. So I don't know if it's a regular warehouse or a high cube warehouse or a fulfillment and distribution center, and sometimes the use changes over time. So we felt it was better to simply be to adjust how the calculation is done. The findings were presented at the Public Works Committee. The actual impact of this fee is relatively nominal. So for a large high-Q warehouse, it will pay about an extra $56,000 in fees, 7% of the total TUMP fees. The impact of this development is the cost to build one of these buildings from start to finish is about $130 a square foot, which means if you're building a million square foot distribution center, you're spending about $130 million. It's about a 0.05% increase in the total project cost. And so we were then asked, when we discussed this with our city managers, to do a more in-depth study on where traffic from one of these facilities go. The idea is perhaps they're all local trips. And that's actually not true. So we collected origin destination data by tracking people's cell phones. I can give you a whole tangent on that. But this is where trips from an Amazon facility in Moreno Valley are going. They're traveling all over the region. So what we found is that these types of distribution centers really are regional facilities, and therefore it justified imposing a higher TUMP fee on them. And then finally, we also have found out that in many cases they are being built on TUMP facilities or being built on major regional arterials, further justifying a higher fee level. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we have two requested actions. One is to approve our new calculation process for warehouses based on this data. And then at a request of the city managers, we've been asked to come back in 2 years and revisit this, because we're also mindful that technology is changing, land uses are changing. In 2 years, it may be that these travel patterns at these facilities have changed. Therefore, we're going to come back to you in 24 months. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions for Mr. Gray? Seeing none. Oh, City of Moreno Valley.
That's mine. Okay. Would these increases take effect immediately, or is there an implementation date?
No, they would take effect. They would take effect following approval of our executive committee.
Okay. So projects that are already being built would be surprised by another fee?
No, the fees are due when either the building permit is issued or the certificate of occupancy is issued. So if they've already been issued building permits, no additional fees would be due. However, when they come in to pay their fees, they would pay the fees at this higher level.
Okay. Well, being that we have building going on in Moreno Valley, I would like to see implementation date in the future so that they're not surprised by new fees.
So my answer to that is, if you wish to make a motion, certainly that's the case. However, what we have done on these minor fee calculation issues is it takes effect once the executive committee takes action.
I just want to make sure I'm clear on what the request is from the City of Moreno Valley. The fees that are applied and calculated for TUMP, they're the same for every city.
Correct. So as of tomorrow, if you are building one of these facilities and you come in, you would pay the the slightly higher fee. Keep in mind that for a 1 million square foot warehouse, you're paying about $1 million. You're paying close to $1 million in fees, just in TUMP fees. So we would ask you to, at the most, to pay another $50,000.
Okay. City of Beaumont.
Will this won't require an adjustment to a resolution, or local resolution, or a local ordinance, will it?
No,
In order for the fee to be effective?
It will not, because there's language in the ordinance that says all fees are calculated based per the fee calculation handbook. So when we make these changes in the fee calculation handbook, that's why they take effect immediately, and there's no ordinance or further action needed by the city.
Okay, and then one other question related to that. When you start looking at fast food restaurants where we took into consideration vehicles driving in to the restaurant, obviously, are we going to be having to look at those fast food restaurants now that deliver food instead of, so now you have trips going both ways, which seems to be a real popular item now, is Grubhub and all the other delivery food locations, restaurants deliver now?
If one or more of our agencies request that we do that, or it becomes an issue, we are always open to look at new land or changes in land use type. So, for example, the city of Corona came to us and said, we're building a number of senior housing. We think senior housing should be charged less of a fee than standard housing. So we went out, did a study, made the adjustment. So as folks have brought new land uses or changes in land use to us, we have made those changes. So if one or more of our member agencies were to ask us that question, we would go out and study it. We would collect the data and determine whether that's correct or not.
Thank you.
City of Banning.
For clarification purposes, the projects that have already been approved, they will not fall into that fee adjustment, or will they?
So it depends if the fees have been paid. So if you've, let's say, approved a warehouse, that warehouse has gone to your city and requested its building permits and paid all of its fees, we would not impose additional fees. However, most developers pay their fees at the absolute last minute. So they are literally paying their fee like a week before they open. So it's likely that if something's been approved and it's under construction now, they have not paid all of their fees. But that would just depend on each individual project.
So basically all the fees that we have given them that would be due at a certain date, now they have additional fees.
That's correct. Most cities, when they tell them their fees, they're very clear that this is an estimate, and then final fees are due at the time of the permits are being issued.
Understood.
Supervisor Hewitt.
Yeah, I have a problem with moving the goalposts back after a permit's already been issued and such like that. And like you say, Chris, a lot of times, sometimes they're paid up front when they issue the permit, but most of the time they're paid at the end. I don't like, there is such a point, we're talking only about 0.05% or $48,000 on a $1 million fee or something like that. But nevertheless, there's an old parable about a camel whose back was broken by a straw, which was a heck of a lot less than 0.05% of the total weight. That's why I'll be voting no on this. I have a problem with doing that afterwards. If we could change it to any project that's already been issued permits and they know what their costs are ahead of time and such, then that we shouldn't be changing that. Something coming forward after that, I still don't like keeping adding more and more fees, but I would probably be able to live with that, but I won't be doing it with this.
Chris, just for point of clarification, in answer to the previous speaker, didn't you say that the fees, I thought I understood you to say that if they had not paid their fees prior to pulling permits, that they would pay their fees when pulling permits. There's no situation where they're paying their fees after getting permits. Is that, are we talking about different kinds of permits?
Yeah, there are different kinds of permits. So what most developers on the non-residential side,
building permit versus the C of O?
Yeah, okay. Most What most developers on the non-residential side will do is they will pull a building permit which allows them to do grading and construction, and they will pay some of their fees at that point. So, for example, some fees are due at grading. I think RCA and some of the habitat fees are due at grading. A number of the water districts require payment of fees at that point. What they will then come do is they will hold off on paying any more fees until they absolutely have to, till they get their certificate of occupancy. Usually they know their tenants, and it's part of the leasing process. At that point, they will generally pay all of their fees. And the fees are calculated at that point of what the fees are due at that point, because sometimes the city fees will change, sometimes other agency fees will change, and that's why all developers are told this is a fee estimate, this is not a binding fee that you have to pay. This is our estimate on your fees. And so for large complex projects, they're usually recalculating the fees at multiple points during the process. So to that end, if anyone has paid their fees, they would pay no more fees. But if anyone has not paid all of their fees, the new fee would kick in.
Okay. City of Riverside.
Just have a workaround for this to potentially have the supervisors vote on this item. How long would it take staff to notify everybody in the process that the intent is to give them the ability to pay their fee under the current fee structure? So if we have a date certain, 60, 90 days, could staff notify everybody that is in the process that this is the date the new fees will be imposed? So it gives them the control, a mechanism at least, and we're responsive to these individuals in the process so they're not surprised. So what would that look like?
So a couple of options is sometimes our fee changes take effect on the fiscal year. So for example, we have an adjustment that's already been adopted by ordinance to adjust the single family fee by $300 as of July 1st. So one option would be to say it takes effect on the fiscal year. Another option would be to push it back. We could do, I would recommend, instead of 30, 60 days, since it's June 3rd, we would do a July 1st, August 1st date, and that would then allow folks that are currently developing. I would say that there's a substantial amount of industrial development currently in the pipeline at various points. So that would give us sufficient time, I think, to notify all the jurisdictions. And I would also add that, as Daniel pointed out, we're collecting fees for 80% of the projects currently, so we're actually the ones telling people what the fees are, and we're the ones notifying folks of what their fees. So I think,
but you still haven't notified them that there could be an increase. Correct. Because it hadn't been voted on. So I mean, I think that's the concern of the individuals that represent the cities. So that could be a motion from somebody at the dais to, you said 60 days from now would give you or August 1st would give you the ability to notify anybody that after that date, if they pull a permit, that's when the fee would be imposed?
Yeah, that certainly would give us more than sufficient time to notify, because we would first notify all of our jurisdictions, we would change our materials, we would put out e-blasts, we would change our website, we would use all our usual notification channels. We also work closely with NAOP to let them know regarding changes in the fees. They commented on our study, they reviewed our study, they provided us with, we consulted with them on the data we were collecting and how we were collecting the data, so we certainly would use them as a mechanism to get the word out as well.
I think the mayor's suggesting that it goes beyond just notifying them, but actually giving them time to gather perhaps some financial resources to pay the fee at the lower rate.
Yeah, so
I'm reading into what he's saying. But
right. So if you were to delay implementation to, let's say, August 1st, that would give a majority of the developers almost 90 days to change the fee. We would tell them what the fee level is. It would give them the opportunity, and we would also concurrently with that say, you know, if you started construction but haven't paid all your fees, you have the option to pay your TUMP fees right now.
July.
Yeah.
Your math is fuzzy.
Well, I would say if we did.
August 1st isn't 90 days, yeah. But City of Calamasa. No? City of Norco.
Well, I'm going to be unpopular. Given that I know how the fee structure works, they expect things can go up and they can go down. And one of the things that I'm concerned about is that this is a way to mitigate impacts. And as a city that has fought against these large buildings, we suffer the impacts nevertheless. And that's really what this is about, is trying to find ways to create projects from these fees so that your neighbors, and more importantly, the people, are not impacted. And so while I understand giving the developers a break, these are projects that are going to last for decades. Anybody who travels on the 60 freeway or the 10 freeway to Los Angeles is meeting many communities' trucks, even though they have fought against those things. I'm not saying they're good or they're bad, except that this is to mitigate issues. And so I personally think that this is something that we're trying to address, something that's happening right now. And to be fair, they already know that these fees may go up. So I would support, as you recommended, that it immediately goes into effect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
City of San Jacinto.
I'm not used to hitting that button on the other side, so if Calamasa really isn't here. I'm like, why isn't it going
stop
on?
pushing their buttons.
No, that's why, if Larry had been here, we wouldn't have the problem. So my question is, haven't we raised fees before?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And have we done it midstream?
So we almost, in the time I've been here, we will regularly make small changes in the calculation, how the fees are calculated. We have done we did one comprehensive nexus study update, but we have at various times, for example, changed how we calculate the retail fee. We have done, I think, based on my recollection, 2 or 3 of these minor fee changes, because what happens is no one else fee changes. It's one type of use. It just so happens that there's a lot of this occurring right now. So yes, we do change the fees. When we have done comprehensive updates, they tend to be tied to our fiscal years. The fee takes effect as of July 1st.
So why hasn't this been an issue then before?
I don't know the extent to it that it has been an issue. Our analysis has showed that given, particularly for these projects, given the magnitude of their overall costs, the change in the TUM fee is relatively nominal. And I don't know if it has been a issue. I will say that as part of our fee collection process, now that we're collecting the fees, we have had people come to us and say, I don't know what this TUM fee is, why I don't even think I should even pay it. And we say, well, the TUM has been around since 2003, and then everyone ends up paying their fees. So to the extent to which this is a significant issue, we don't believe it is. We would not, if we had thought it was necessary to bring forward a delay period, we would have recommended one. However, I would say it's a minor change in the fee, and if you feel it's appropriate to have a delay, staff would be happy to implement that. And whether it's 60 or 90 days, yes, Supervisor Washington, my math is incorrect. September 1st would roughly be 90 days.
But see, that's my question, is why is it all of a sudden a problem? Because it seems like we're trying to give a deal to someone over other people that haven't had that deal. They haven't had the opportunity to hold that fee off. And so I just don't understand why we're trying to do it now. It doesn't affect us either way. We don't have those types of warehouses in our city, but it is a question as to, are we going to do this each time, or, is this really that big of a problem?
Yeah, I would say we did defer the increase in residential fees for 2 years. So when you approved the Nexus study, we had a 2-year delay for the increase in the residential fee.
Right.
So we have done it before. Whether it's problematic or not, I would say that that would be a matter of opinion.
I feel compelled to just interject. The purpose of the fee is to mitigate the impact of development. When we initiated the TUMF program, there were at least a couple of economists who said that if we didn't address infrastructure and congestion, we would choke on our own traffic. So most of us then have gone along with the TUMF program, recognizing that we do need to support our infrastructure. Then once we establish the TUMF program, changes to it can't just be done arbitrarily. They have to be supported by a study. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So when we do make those changes, or if a study is done that justifies an increase and we don't implement the increase, then that's a political decision on our part. And as a result of that political decision, then those projects that are on the list to get funded just are going to take longer to get funded.
Correct.
Because we won't have enough money. We've actually never had enough money right from the beginning of the TUMF program. So that's not an editorial about whether you want the TUMF program or not, but I think it's important to note that we have frequently had this debate about whether to fund increases or not, or request increases. And right now, do you have off the top of your head what percentage our TUMF projects are actually funded in terms of, I know it's not 100%. Is it 93%?
So I would just say that we've periodically done analyses of some of the decisions that have been made during the course of the program. So as you may know, there was a decision made at the beginning of the program to say we're going to allow certain developers to be exempt from TUMF if they had a development agreement. We think that cost the program about $100 million. And so far we've collected about $800 million. We went through a process where we allowed some of you to decrease your fees to 50%. That cost the program about $20 or $30 million. Within the grand scheme of things, whether this increase goes in or it goes in now or it's delayed, it's going to have a nominal effect on the program. But I would say there isn't a single TUMF project that doesn't need more money. We have a handful that are under construction right now that have adequate funding, but it's because the agency was able to bring other funding sources to that project, or get outside funding, or get funding from the state, or funding from a local DIF. It seems like everyone needs more money, and that's one of our challenges we face is we sometimes have to say no when someone comes to us and says, well, I need $5 million. Well, it is a good time for us now in the TUMF program, but revenues are going up, but costs are going up as well.
Supervisor Hewitt.
I think we're getting a little bit off the thing. This doesn't have anything to do with any other delays or anything. This is basically just to address people that have already come in there. We've told them this is what your fees are going to be. Oh, but don't worry, they could be a lot more. I would make the substitute motion, or the amended motion, would be probably a better way to put it, that we keep this the same except for anybody that has already pulled their permits and is in the process of doing that. Then we can extend that 60 days for them to go ahead at their choice if they want to go ahead and save some money and pay that before that, because that's what they were told when they came in and they applied for the permit and got it. It would only affect those, but it's evidently quite a few in the cities of Beaumont, cities of Moreno Valley, many others, many in my own district, and show that we're trying to at least say, hey, here's what it's going to cost. We can make up those impacts like Councilman Bash has said, on later ones where I don't like changing the goalpost during it. So I'll make that motion that we keep it the same, fees the same, everything else, but give 60 days for people who have that, that want to pay that and save some money on that, to do that, because that's what they were told.
Supervisor, your motion is noted. I have a couple more requests to speak, so I'm going to just hold that motion for the time being. if you don't mind. City of Beaumont.
Yeah, typically my experience with the fee increases has always been there's been a notification and a time frame in which those fees are going to go up. For example, residential fees will be going up July 1st. There's a notification. Jurisdictions have the opportunity to put signs out and notify customers. The other concern that I have that Supervisor Hewitt is referencing is the TUMP program does not allow what's referred to as prepayment. In other words, you can't pay the fees prior to your permit being issued. However, at the same time, once that permit is issued, you have the ability to pay your fees, and some jurisdictions may even generate an invoice for those fees, and to have that invoice changed 2 days later or a day later and increase that fee, I don't think is fair to the developer, which could impact the county or any other city. The other concern that I have is some software programs have the fees built in. Those jurisdictions would need an opportunity to revise their software programs and adjust the calculation because of the fact that we want to make sure that those fees are collected appropriately and correctly, but you won't give those jurisdictions time. So I agree with Supervisor Hewitt along with his motion in the 60 days. Thank you.
City of Marietta.
So going back to the days when we did the TUMP program in the first place, and Chuck had alluded to it, and so did Chris, what it boils down to is no matter what we do, it's all about whether we're going to collect that money and mitigate, or whether we're, as a government agency, are going to absorb the costs, because everything we do to put off a fee turns into a cost later on. And a perfect example is the developer agreements that Chris was alluding to. 18 years later, we have developer agreements in place. We have entities going in that should be paying $900,000 a piece in TUMP that aren't because of those developer agreements. Nobody envisioned those type of businesses going in that land. So it was just a mechanism for somebody to race in front of the finish line and then not have to pay. And then today we're looking for money to build infrastructure, and a lot of the money that we should have been collecting for it all along for those the businesses that are impacting and will be impacted, they never they're not paying into the system, and we're not collecting for it. So I think what we're talking about here is just, you know, where's the line? Because there are going to be people that race in front of it, and there's going to be people that wait, and then there are going to be people that complain because they waited too long and they think they should be raced, they should have gotten in front of it. So I think it's more of a, you know, we just have to make a decision and just understand that whatever decision we make, what we don't collect, we eat. We have to figure out how to pay for that. So that's all. That's my comments.
Thank you. So there's no one else in the queue to speak, and Supervisor Hewitt has suggested a motion. The actual requested action, Supervisor Hewitt, is to approve the adjustment to the high cube warehouse component of the TUMP calculation handbook and to direct staff to conduct a review of that data in 24 months. Is your motion to approve staff's recommendation with an implementation 60 days from now? What is the intent of your motion?
So again, anybody who hasn't come in and actually submitted plans or something, there's no 60-day anything for them. It's people that are in the works right now. Instead of us changing it, after they've already, they figured it into their books. We'd have a tough time if things change all the time, even on our books in the county and stuff. So, it's giving them a chance. If they want to come in and say, hey, look, you're going to save $50,000 on this if you pay it before August 1st, even though you may not have your certificate of occupancy until later in the year, and it's where it's going to cost you a lot more. So it's really kind of giving a grace period for those that are already in the chute, so to speak, and that's what I think. It's a fairly small, but from what Chris says, there's a lot of them going on right now, and 80% don't do it until the very end. So this could affect quite a few, and give them a chance. I don't know how many will do it. Some might They say, no, we don't have money right now anyway or something. They'll be affected later on. But this will give them the chance to decide when we make a change that they couldn't foresee.
I would anticipate that the detail of what the supervisor just offered could be very problematic to try to roll out, but I'm going to ask Mr. DeBon if he could maybe advise us a bit on how we color those two different types of developments, one that's already in the process and someone else who's not.
Right. So let me try this. We would retain the first requested action, but add to that any increase in the fee would be delayed for 60 days for any developer which has already pulled a permit but has not yet paid its fees.
Yes.
And I would just say that we have all the information we need to track that. Mike, I think your point is very well taken about certain jurisdictions. For example, the county has a very extensive land development permitting software that would give us time to work with them as well. So I think Supervisor Hewitt's motion is very doable for staff.
Okay, Janice, just for the sake of, no, you better not do that. I was going to say open the motion, but I have a couple more comments, request to speak, and then I'll ask that we open it so that he can make his motion. Norco.
So I guess to sort of piggyback on what you said, I just happen to hold that the impacts to the people are paramount. And that's the whole purpose of this. And I totally get the developers there to make money, create jobs, do all those things. But there will be a cost that's going to be borne, and that's exactly why this is happening. And then I'm a little bit confused. So if somebody has come in a year ago, paid their permit fees, and they're in the process of development, or let's say like right now we have an industrial project that's been in the queue for 3.5 years. So that person can just keep going, or at the end of 30 to 60 days they would have to pay the new rate?
So my interpretation of Supervisor Hewitt's request would be as follows. There would be 3 categories of projects. First category is a person has submitted, let's say, a plan to the city, and they're in plan check, it hasn't been approved by city council, they have no building permits, it's a conceptual project.
Or they get entitled.
They're entitled.
Right.
They would pay the higher fee because they have no permits. The third category would be those who have actually paid all their fees, and they're in the process of finishing up construction. No new fees would be due. The third category are those people who are in the middle, meaning they've come in, they're actually working on their site, maybe they're doing grading, they've pulled their permits, they have permission to build, but they haven't paid all of their fees. So we will go to them and say, you're going to pay the fee at the current rate, so if they come in, we'll give them the option of paying their fee at the lower rate if they have not paid all their fees. That's my interpretation of what the supervisor has asked us to do.
Or wait.
Or wait.
Wait 60 days, 90 days. Yes. You can do that.
Yes, we can do that.
And there's, as I mentioned earlier, there's different kinds of permits.
Correct.
So when you say they pulled a permit, we probably need to be clear about.
Our interpretation would be they have pulled a permit to begin construction, so they're actually putting up stuff. That would be my very technical term.
Not a grading permit?
No. They're actually, I would say, construction, and they're actually putting up stuff.
Okay. Harupa Valley.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I agree with Supervisor Hewitt in what he said. I would suggest possibly a 90-day instead of a 60-day delay on that fee change.
Okay. September 1st is 90 days, yeah. Chris, so is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Janice, then you open it so that I'm going to ask Supervisor Hewitt to press the motion button and then also to restate his motion.
Yes, sir. And just so you're aware, I've retyped the following items on this, so it correctly now reflects what's on the actual agenda.
Okay. You were doing that while the meeting was going on?
Yes, sir.
And listening to everything we were saying?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So, again, Supervisor Hewitt, can you please restate what you hope to gain from this motion?
Exactly what Mr. DeVon said. He had such a simple way of saying what took me 5 minutes.
Okay, all right.
But we will,
okay.
It's 60 days. We're at 60 days.
No, we're at 90 days.
But that would be another addendum. So my motion is 60.
Oh, okay, 60.
His motion is 60 days.
Okay. And I can restate the motion if that's...
No,
Yes.
no, we don't need more. We don't need more. Yeah, you got it, Chris?
I got it.
So that's August 1st.
August 1st.
All right, please register your votes.
I can agree with that.
We do. We have a second by Moreno Valley. That motion carries with 14 yes votes, 2 no votes, and 2 abstentions. Janice, can you display the actual vote and so that everybody knows who voted yes, who voted no, and who abstained? There
Do
it
you
is.
no longer see it on the screen?
Okay. No. Oh, it's the water districts. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Now we're down to the really tough stuff. Nominations for chair, vice chair, and second vice chair. And Mr. DeBon, do we have to do all of those separately? I guess that would probably be advised, huh? Or can we just do it all in one?
You can do it all at once as long as we don't have voting confusion. But if the slate is accepted as is, then we can do it all at once. Otherwise, I would recommend doing it separately.
I'm going to make the motion and the second.
I don't think you can make a second.
Joke. Open it up, Janice. Nobody's requesting to speak. Quick, let's get the vote out.
So while I did retype it, I did not retype this particular one as 3 separate actions. It's all one.
That's okay.
In the interest of time.
If somebody objects, guaranteed they will let me know. All right, this is to approve Bonnie Wright as chair, Kevin Bash as vice chair, and Kelly Ciardo as second vice chair. All in favor, vote. Actually, anybody vote, whether you're in favor or not, just vote. Wow, it's unanimous. That's great. Yes, yes. All right, Mr. George Johnson, would it be too much of a strain on you to give us a technical advisory report, committee?
Yeah, I really don't have much to report other than to say I had a little accident over the weekend, and as I was doing some yard work and cleaning up the eaves where I had some bird nests in the house, that I fell off a ladder and smacked my forehead on a concrete curb. So I spent Saturday night at the emergency room getting stitched up, and fortunately I'm back and I'm fine.
So when I broke my wrist,
hard hit.
When I broke my wrist snowboarding and I went to the emergency room, they said, "And how old are you?"
Well, clearly I'm too old to be on a ladder anymore. So I think I learned something this weekend. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here and safe. Reports from committee representatives, and we'll start with any of the SCAG representatives who attend Regional Council or Policy Committee.
Well, we have the conference, so
You had the
we have separate
Okay.
meetings.
Okay. So nothing to report from anyone. AQMD, Ben Benoit.
No major items to report this time.
CalCog, Brian Tisdale.
Yes, sir. We had a meeting on Tuesday of last week. So just a couple things. If you go to calcog.org, you can look at what CalCog, what bills they support, their updates, and what positions they take on them. There was a lot of talk up there about the housing trailer bill and housing in general. I did leave with a positive note, though. The governor has an advisor. Her name is Tia Boatman Patterson. She's got a long history. She's a lawyer. I don't know if that's a good thing. It's always a good thing. But she worked on the Sacramento housing. He wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, Steve didn't hear you.
And my other favorite lawyer out there, she's already left. So, okay, it doesn't matter. But so the governor has now taken an approach that it's not a one-size-fits-all for housing, which was very impressive because, you know, we had certain senators that were trying to force the San Francisco model down our throat. So that was a positive thing. So the governor is actually listening. So that's very positive. CalCog will keep supporting us and keep pushing local control, and that's a good thing. They're moving forward with their next Leadership Academy, which Caltrans has funded $75,000. That's a good thing. And we approved our budget for next year. We did an extension for our executive director. And then the other thing that was positive is the EDs for CSAC and for the League of Cities. They both spoke to us, and they're working together on issues, and that's always positive when our counties and cities are all working together for a common good. So it was a very positive meeting, and we'll have another meeting in November, I think. So thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Teasdale. SAPA, oh wow, committee. Mayor Bailey.
Yes, indeed, it was a wow moment for me when I was able to recommend $23 million of funding. It only took 5 years to get there from Prop 1 bond proceeds of 2014. But that's government at work for us, right? And there was funding across the board. Or first of all, the One Water, One Watershed Committee of SAPA is a united voice for the Santa Ana River watershed. And it still is united because OWOW funding, although it was reduced from $23 million to $16.7 million per negotiations with North Orange County, because they didn't feel like they were getting enough on previous funding rounds. And so it was a 30% allocation to keep them a part of SAPA. And I think that works in our favor. To be one water, one watershed, or to call ourselves that, we would have to have Orange County as part of that. So negotiations worked, although the funding decreased a little bit for our neck of the woods. But there was some significant funding that came our way, and I'll detail those quickly. Evans Lake Tributary Restoration and Camp Evans Recreation. Actually 4 categories in terms of what this funding addresses from the Integrated Regional Water Management Project funding. It addresses supply, addresses conservation, recreation, and then protection. And one of the recreation and conservation projects in our neck of the woods, again, Evans Lake Tributary Restoration and Camp Evans Recreation, creates recreation and education facilities and aquatic terrestrial habitats near Evans Lake in the city of Riverside, but is a regional draw right up the 60 freeway. Establishes and maintains aquatic habitat restoration for native aquatic species such as our very own threatened Santa Ana suckerfish. That's true. That's a real word. That's a real species, Santa Ana sucker. It also restores habitats, and it'll be monitored and maintained in perpetuity by the Upper Santa Ana River Habitat Conservation Plan, and that was in partnership with San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water District. So we are continuing to love our neighbors, thanks to San Bernardino Valley and County coming our way. There's the Santa Ana Mountains Watershed Protection Project. This is one of the protection pieces that we found out we found out we needed many years ago, but most recently because of the fires and the mudslides. It provides and maintains 651 acres of fuel breaks. That's forest fire fuel breaks on National Forest System lands along the crest of the Santa Ana Mountains over the next 7 years. So it'll reduce the probability of future wildfire events that negatively impact the soil, water quality, and vegetation. There's also SAPA Regional Comprehensive Landscape Rebate Program. There's the conservation aspect and accelerated leak detection and metering. And then a joint project between Inland Empire Utility Agency, and the Hrupa Community Services District on a regional water recycling program. And that's going to create some more supply, 38,000 linear feet of pipe to maximize use of recycled water throughout the Chino Basin, 4,000 acre feet a year recycled water. Enhancements to watershed-wide water budget decision support tool. Develops an urban landscape assessment tool to measure, classify, monitor, and report on landscape water demands for the SAPA. Over 70 retail agencies will be benefited by that. And then the last one is my friends over in Lake Elsinore. I have friends there, right? Yes, sir. Okay. Physical harvesting of algal biomass in Lake Elsinore. Removal of excessive algae growth to attain newly revised total maximum daily loads and improve and maintain the health of the lake. Is that good for you? I like it. All right. So that's what we have going on from SAPA. I'm proud to represent you all, and oh wow.
Great. All right. Next is Councilmember Ruiz and the Sandag Borders Committee.
It's interesting to go down there and talk about the border with them, because they're not just talking about the border with Mexico. One of their main concerns is the border with Riverside County, and they're talking about an interregional park and ride strategy from getting people from Riverside County over to San Diego, and how we can alleviate traffic and that kind of thing. So as that progresses and we move forward and have all these joint meetings that come up, I'll be letting you guys know, but that's the main thing about what would affect WRCOG.
All right, thank you. Next is a report from the Executive Director, and Rick Bishop is not here today, but very aptly, Barbara Spoonhour will give us an Executive Director report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To start us off, we will be at Lake Elsinore Storm June 7th for our oil giveaway awareness program. If you are interested in attending, we do have a handful of tickets, so if you could please see staff, we'll be happy to give those to you. Next, we have an update on our streetlight program, retrofit. This is an updated map from this morning showing the City of Murrieta's retrofit. They're about 70% complete. City of Moreno Valley is about 50% complete with their retrofit. Exciting news, City of Eastvale is going to start their retrofitting tomorrow, and the remaining jurisdictions are in various processes of selecting and purchasing their LED lights so that they can get on in track for retrofit. I also want to make everybody aware, again, General Assembly will be Thursday, June 20th. We've extended the event to a full-day conference that starts with the Future of Cities Symposium, which starts at 10. Like in prior years, WRCOG's offering its executive committee members complimentary hotel room for the night of June 20th for members attending the General Assembly dinner and the executive committee the following morning. This year, WRCOG is also offering its executive committee members the opportunity to stay Wednesday night if they're attending the Future of Cities Symposium on Thursday morning. If you have any questions or would like to confirm your hotel reservations, please get in touch with Cynthia Mejia, WRCOG staff, and we look forward to seeing everybody at this year's General Assembly at Pechanga, and we're looking forward to another successful event.
Great. Thank you, Barbara. General announcements from members. Seeing none, our next meeting, again, will be Friday after General Assembly, June 21st at 10 in the morning. And we are adjourned. Thank you.